Nassim Haramein. Who is he? What is he about? And a fellow raised the issue, says Nassim Haramein has calculated a geometric solution for the gravitational field. Uh-huh. And says in his latest paper, Quantum Gravity and the Holographic Mass, he describes gravity, okay? Describes, right? In a classical algebraic way by calculating the density of the space, both within and on the outside of the event horizon of a proton, okay? What is this all about? Well, it's about this gentleman. His name is Nassim Haramein. He's, I think, born in Switzerland of Iranian parents, and apparently he does have some influence from the East in his upbringing, his education, his experience, right? And so let's find out what this is all about. Well, it says that he published a paper. It wasn't so recent. This was in 2013. And I think it's the only paper he published. After 30 years of doing research, this is the best he came up with. So let's look at what he's all about. Here it is. He says Quantum Gravity and the Holographic Mass. He published it, and apparently new scientists picked up on it and wrote a little article, and then it was scrapped away. Nobody ever read it again. Okay, so that's the situation with that paper. Okay, nobody's paid any attention. The establishment certainly doesn't bow down to it. Okay, and so what is it that Mr. Nassim or Mr. Adam talked about in that paper? Here we can synthesize it for you, and that includes also his general thoughts, okay, on physics, if we can call it that, mathematical physics to be more correct, okay, mathematics as we call it here. And this is a synthesis of his train of thought, his way of thinking, what he's proposing. This is what he concluded after 30 years of investigation. 30 years of doing equations, he finally came up with the best equation he could, okay, so here it is. He says that in that paper, he says he's got an equation, which he calls my equation, and he says the exact gravitational mass of a black hole. That's what he calculated. He's saying his main conclusion is that a proton is a black hole. In fact, all subatomic particles are mini black holes. Okay? He says it's a new theory, also what he's got, and his new theory is all about the ether. And that makes me kind of wonder, because the ether has been around for 3,000 years now. So how is it possible that, he cannot, that he's still bringing up the ether after so many centuries? Okay, he calls it the fluid space. In other words, he equates ether with space, and we're going to see that in a little bit as well. And he calls it fluid space. In other words, this ether is moving all around. And let's see if I can put this here. Hopefully this one works. And that's what it looks like, more or less. Okay, that's the ether, and the waving in the ether. Okay, so this is, he's saying it's a new theory. Okay, he's a wave fellow, essentially. And so he's saying that he invented this new theory that's got the fluid ether, which is fluid space. Okay, great. Then he says, he starts out his reasoning, if we can call it that. He says, an atom is mostly empty space because it's equal to 0.9999999 bunch of nines percent of space. Okay, so if that's what an atom is, mostly empty space, he says an atom, or matter in general, is pretty much space. They're both approximately equal, space and matter, because an atom is mostly empty space. So he equates something with nothing. Okay, he's going to say that something and nothing are essentially the same. In fact, he says it clearly. He says space, matter, mass, charge, gravity, electromagnetic field. There are no differences between these things. Now, how clear is that? I mean, that's as clear as it gets. Then he says that space-time fluctuates with intense energy. What is that? It's the Planck fluctuations, which are the vacuum energy. And he says that gravity is the fluctuation of the structure of the vacuum. So he got all these notions from his schooling, from the establishment. That's where he gets all this stuff. Okay, fine. He hasn't said anything new. And again, he equates space with matter and all these things. He says they're all the same thing. He never defines any of these terms, nowhere. Okay, so you would think that he's more into business, building a business empire, than he is in talking about physics. Okay? He's also a fan of Mayan. He talks about Mayan secret geometry. So he's a fan of all these. You got several people out there that say that the ancients knew more than we do, and we lost all this knowledge over time. That they knew a lot, and somehow it got lost. You got a lot of people that have these thoughts, that have this opinion about what happened in history. He's a Tesla lover, and let's see if we can put that in there. Hopefully this works. This is Mr. Tesla, okay, and this is what he believed in. So if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration, not as solid physical forms. So Mr. Tesla was not into physical, he was into abstractions, okay? And that's what he purported to explain the universe with. He says, if you only know the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, mathematical numbers, right? Then you would have the key to the universe. This is what this poor fellow believed in, okay? But I like the next one down here. He seems to have a contradiction. He says, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. Today's scientists, he continues, says, today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. So on the one hand, he talks about math and abstractions, and on the other one, he criticizes the mathematicians because they went more abstract. They're talking about a lot of math and very little experiments. So he seems to have a contradiction. We don't know if he vouched for math or not in the end. But I like the last one. It says, the gift of mental power comes from God, divine being. And if we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become in tune with His great power. My mother had taught me to seek all truth in the Bible. Okay, so that's good old Nicky for you. And this fellow, Haramein, well, he's in the same boat essentially. I don't know if he says he believes in God and all that, but he is a little transcendental, we can call it, spiritual, right? And it seeps into his work. Okay, you can see it in there. Okay, and finally, he says that he vouches for the holographic structure of space-time. What is that all about? Well, let me show you here an example, okay, so that you get an idea what the holographic universe is. This thing that came out of a black hole, studying of black holes and string theory, which is what they do. They're trying to unify quantum mechanics with general relativity, the macro world, the world of the cosmos, cosmic world, which includes black holes according to general relativity. And then on the other hand, you have the quantum world, which is all particles. And the way they plan to bring these two irreconcilable disciplines or fields of study together is through the black hole. And what they're studying is all the garbage that falls into a black hole. They say all that matter somehow gets reflected on the surface of the event horizon, which, as a lot of you know, is the region of influence of a black hole, where you still have supposedly the escape velocity of light. Okay, so this is what Haramein is talking about. This is what he vouches for. Okay, let's see if this shows up. Yeah, it does. Okay, his holographic universe. And if you look it up on the Wikipedia, it says the description of a volume of space can be thought of as encoded on a lower dimensional boundary to the region. In other words, you have this 2D universe, and from there you can project a hologram. Okay, this is what they're talking about. This is what all the math being done lately, especially by string theorists, is all about. They're trying to find out all the garbage that falls inside a black hole and how it maps onto its surface. Okay, and here you see it on the right. It says the holographic principle was inspired by black hole thermodynamics, which conjectures that the maximum entropy in any region seals with a radius squared and not cubed as might be expected. So they're talking about 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional, right? In the case of a black hole, the insight was that the informational content of all the objects that have fallen into the hole might be entirely contained in surface fluctuations of the event horizon. Okay? The holographic principle resolves the black hole information paradox within the framework of string theory. Well, we don't know what this information paradox is and what information has anything to do with physics. Information is a concept. Information is not what you send out. Information is what someone interprets at the receiving end. That's information. And to say that's got something to do with physics, how the world works, how the universe works, how gravity works, well, it's stretching the imagination, I'd say the brain a little bit. These people are doing nonsense. That's what kind of work you're paying for at the universities, and that's what the governments are supporting. Rich people who donate money to the universities and funding a lot of these projects. That's what they're funding. They're funding these people who are just doing equations on the blackboard or wherever, and maybe with their computer or on their desk with pencil or paper, crayons or whatever. And they're doing equations. And their equations have to do with what? With a 0-dimensional singularity. zero-dimensional singularity, which is what I talked about the other day a little bit, which is, you have Stephen Hawking, and you had another fellow there, an Indian fellow from Oxford, or Cambridge, Oxford, I think it was. And what do they say? They say, yeah, Chandrasekhar proved, that's what he got his Nobel Prize for, he proved that a black hole is zero-dimensional, collapses to zero size, zero volume, infinite density. So what matter are they talking about that somehow maps itself onto the 3D or the surface of the event horizon, which is the region of influence of nothing, of a zero-dimensional nothing. You have a nothing there. Why? Because all matter has been crushed out of existence. There is no matter. What is mass? Mass is the quantity of matter, or a measure of the quantity of matter. Matter has disappeared. There's no structure whatsoever inside a black hole. It's zero-dimensional. There's nothing there. So how can it not have matter, but it has mass in zero-dimensional size, in zero-dimensional or zero-dimensional volume? There's nothing there. And from there, they build this this event horizon, which is a region of influence of supposedly of that singularity. It's all nonsense. It's all math. It's got nothing to do with reality. There are no such things as black holes, because a thing is that which has shape, and that which has shape has length, width, and height, especially if it's in physics. It's a real thing. So it's got to be at least three-dimensional. Black hole doesn't meet those specifications. Okay. So before we can talk about some of these things, we have to find out what specifically Mr. Haramein is about. And what he's about is what he tries to peddle out there, because he's really a businessman. He's not into physics at all. He's just trying to make money, like so many others out there. And what does he talk about? Well, he talks about this. He talks about the interconnected universe. And for this, he pulls the Shrine of Sayyidah Fatima. And that's in Iran. Again, that's where his folks came from. And so he's got this thing that you can see, it's pretty much interconnected. Okay, so you see all these interconnections. That's why he's got that in his Facebook page. Okay, that's good. What does he interconnect the universe with? As a physicist, you would think that he would try to interconnect the universe somehow, right? So you would think, if he's talking about connection, right, between atoms, between everything in the universe, he's saying everything is connected. Is he talking about the same thing that I'm talking about when I say the universe is interconnected, physically interconnected? That's what a physicist talks about, right? Okay, so let's find out. Now, this is what he's talking about. He says, here you have quantum mechanics on the one side, which is all discrete particles, and you would think that he, as a physicist, would be talking about what you see on the right, a connected universe where all atoms are physically interconnected. In other words, what you need to identify is those little lines that unite or that bind any two atoms. And again, we talked a little bit about that last week, so you can look that up. Question that arises is, what connects two atoms, especially one vibrates and affects the other one at a distance? Either you put something in between or you do black magic. Okay, so it can't be both ways. So if you put something in between, we need to know what that something is and what it looks like, identify it for us. And that doesn't mean you've seen it or you tested it. No, it just means you imagine it and you're going to explain whatever you explain your theory with, you're going to explain it with that thing. Okay? And the reason I say this is that interconnectivity in the universe has been around for, I'd say, thousands of years. It's not the first time someone thinks about a universe that is interconnected, interdependent. Here you have two examples. One is the Hindus, okay, and they talk about the interwoven tapestry of cause and effect. And they really are not talking about things. As you can see, they're talking about social and moral. They're talking about the web of life, energy. They're talking about concepts, and they're not interested in the physics part of it. They're trying to tell you how to live. Okay, they're trying to tell you how to behave in society, and for that they start by saying, look, you're supposed to treat nature properly. We need the plants, we need the animals, et cetera, et cetera. It's got to do with a lot of that and very little to do with physics. You won't find a physical object that interconnects the universe in all of Hinduism. And just in case, here's Buddhism, okay, same thing. And here they talk about interdependence through space and time, causality that are interwoven through the universe. Everything is interconnected. Yeah, by what? And they mentioned the fact that quantum mechanics has more or less proven that to them, because they talk about entanglement, and they said, look, if entanglement shows that this atom affects that one, we're pretty much on the same boat. They're saying that everything's interconnected. Yeah, the problem is that no one has figured out, what interconnects us. What physical object is interconnecting the atoms, the universe, the matter in the universe? And no one identified it, not the Buddhists, not the Hinduists, and for sure, no one today. So when Haramein comes in there and says, look, the universe is interconnected, he hasn't said something new unless he puts a physical object in there and shows what binds two atoms, two pieces of matter, two universes, whatever. Okay, so he's got to put something in there. If he doesn't put anything in there, he hasn't said anything new. He's just repeated what the Hinduists and Buddhists have said for centuries. Okay, so here it is. Here's a summary. Let's hope I can see this now. Yeah, this one came out, okay? And he says the following. He says, there is a flow of the energy of the universe inside you. Whoa, that doesn't sound like physics. It sounds more like he's going to sell you something, how to behave, how to be a nice guy, how to treat nature. You know, he's going to talk about stuff that's got nothing, recommendations, you know, nothing that's got to do with physics. He says everything is connected through this energy. Oh, my God. Energy, as we found out the other day, it's a concept. So you can't say you're connecting something with energy. Then he says space is what's connecting everything. These are statements taken out of his videos, by the way, just like you read them there. Space is what's connecting everything. What do you mean space connects? Space is what separates, not what connects. Space is nothing. But of course, he said space is something, and therefore he's connecting it with this something. What he doesn't do is draw, he doesn't illustrate this something so that we can see what he's talking about when he says that space connects everything. He says space is the thing that connects all things. So he's talking about space as a thing. He says that's the connector, the binding thing, the thing that connects us to everything physically, right? Because I guess he's talking about physics. As one little proton is connected to all other protons in the universe. Spin, the one thing that connects us all. Spin. So spin connects us. Okay, what is he talking about? How can spin connect anything? Is spin, you spin a top. How does that connect you to the other top? They're both spinning. How are they connected? Then he says space-time is an energy that connects everything. So he's got all these words. He's got it. It's all ether. The electromagnetic or electrostatic field that we see as matter is just a function of the dynamics of that ether. Gravity is a function of that ether. And then again he says space, mass, charge, gravity, electromagnetic field. There are no differences between these things. Okay? They're all connected through quantum fluctuations. So let's see, he says, what are the connections? He says there's energy, space, spin, space-time, ether, and quantum fluctuations. That's what connects everything. None of those are physical objects. So yeah, he finally says, it's really hard to wrap your head around it. Yeah, no kidding. So again, I think Mr. Haramein is into something else. He's into doing business. He's into trying to hit the jackpot by, running his company. He's got a little company in Hawaii over there. And what he wants to do is see if he can convince the world, especially the mathematicians, that he's onto something. Okay, that's what he's up to. And just as a comparison here, you see, this is what we're proposing. We're saying, yeah, we are saying that all atoms are physically interconnected. Okay, and so all those lines that you see there, those are what we call the electromagnetic ropes, and they do bind any two atoms, not like they're pasted to the surface of the atom. It's that the ropes convert into the atom, which converts into a rope, which converts into an atom, and so on down the line. There's a single thread in the entire universe. Everything is, there's one thing only in the universe, which is the thread, the universal thread, and that's what converts into ropes, atoms, and so on down the line. Okay, so that's what we're proposing. So we do have a physical connector. There is no action at a distance. Okay, so that's the difference. On the other hand, this fellow talks about energy and quantum fluctuations, space, and stuff that is not stuff. That's the difference. Okay, so when he says the connected universe, which is what his sales pitch is for physics, he also does some other stuff out there, does a little bit of history. He branched off into other line items because I guess he needed to make money to keep his company afloat. And so he branched off into all these other things, but he kept this connected universe, which he's trying to see if he can convince the establishment of. And yeah, if you're going to connect it with abstract concept, you're not doing much of a connection. There's no binding there, no physicality to the whole thing that you're proposing. So this connected word in there is too much. It's not connected at all. He's trying to connect it with abstract concepts, and that's not a connection. Anyways, he's not the only one who's who's trying to make money. All these people also, not only Haramein, but Cox, Al-Khalili, all these people, they're just trying to make money. None of these are scientists. None of these are physicists. They are all deluded charlatans. That's what they are, and they're making money. That's their only purpose. That's why they're up there. And they're supported by the establishment, okay, because it keeps the ball rolling. And so they just pass on what they learn in college by rote, through authority, through tradition, and they pass that on down to the masses. And what they do is really entertainment. They don't do physics, they do entertainment. Okay? So, that's the world in which we live. That's what so-called physics, mathematical physics, mathematics, that's what it's evolved into. That's how it developed. That's what we have today. And for the last 60 years, there hasn't been anything new. In quantum, nothing changed. They still have particles. They want to call these particles, no longer they call them particles like discrete particles, nothing like that. Now they're called fields. And a particle is really an excited field locally. And when you measure it, then you measure it as a particle. When you don't measure it, you don't look at it, you don't see it, you don't touch it, then it becomes a field back again. So that's the way they treat that. How about general relativity? Well, in the 60s, you had Roger Penrose and Stephen Hawking, and they popularized a thought that had already been coming from 1915, which was the black hole. They popularized the black hole. Well, when people got tired of that I think towards the end of the 80s or 90s, I think it was 98. I think in 98, they came up with dark matter. Einstein never heard of that. That came much later. And so today we have dark matter. And since then, there's been nothing new. It's all the same nonsense. They just regurgitate. All these people, they say exactly the same thing. You saw one, you heard them all. There's no difference between any of these people. Maybe one guy says it a little differently than the other, gives you a different example, a different analogy, fine. They're a little different in that sense. But they all say, the bottom line, when you open the onion all the way to the end, they all say the same thing. And it's black holes, dark matter, until you get sick of it, okay? Dark energy, obviously, parallel universes, Big Bang. You're going to hear about all that till the end of time. Quantum mechanics, same nonsense. Particles, it can be at two places at once. You have entanglement, you have superposition, the same old nonsense. They all say the same thing. You see one, you see them all. So there's nothing new. And in that sense, you could say physics, mathematical physics, is at a dead end. What more equations do we need? We need to figure out how gravity works. We need to figure out, how this magnet attracts that one. Okay, that's what we need to figure out. That's what people want to understand. That's what people want to do. And we don't have that. After 3,000 years, or maybe more, nobody understands that yet. Nobody can, in mathematics, okay, mathematical physics can explain to you how a magnet attracts another, or how gravity works. Okay. Fellow says in relation to that, he's two fellows, and this gives you an idea of what the state of a lot of people is out there. They become atheists in mathematical physics. They don't like all that garbage they hear about Big Bang and black holes and dark matter. They don't understand any of it. They hear the same thing over and over. They want to search for clues for how this universe works, and they can't find it. They can't find it out there in mathematical physics, the official version, right? And so these two fellows, one says, science is a religious thing. It's been used to replace divining the future by inspecting chicken and your mission is to find a replacement that fulfills that function. Yeah, sounds religion. We've been doing that for a while. It's all magic and BS. Okay, and another fellow says, scientists don't know nothing. Neither does anyone else. People have lost hope, and they say, it's all nonsense. What are these people feeding us? And, these are usually laymen, and they don't understand anything of what's going on out there, and they can't get an understanding. Maybe they're trying to find something. They're trying to find out how this universe works, how does gravity work, how does magnetism work, electricity, and so on, light. And these people just keep giving them the runaround, mathematical equations and so on. So they're sick of all that, okay? And here's another fellow. He says something along those lines. He criticizes me, and that's good. I like to put these people up here, okay? Fell on the other side. When I don't have one problem, I have the other. Give me a second here. Let me get it up there again. Okay, here it goes, if I get it right. Okay, he says, we are all in the same boat, Bill. Even you, as we fight the stupid establishment, okay? Your rope hypothesis will only be contemplated by flat earthers. And I guess he meant also the electric universes, right? No serious scientist will ever respond to any of your work. They have vested interest in what is said to be now. Flat earthers can think outside the box. No doubt about that. Just like the electric universe people can, okay? Stop talking down to the people that try to learn. You are going to need them. Well, what can I say? I say that, I don't need these people. I don't need them not because the establishment is irrational. I'm going to go with more irrationality coming out of the flat earthers and the electric universe and the John Chappell Society, also another group there. All these groups are irrational. They don't have anything rational in them. So it's not like I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to unite with all my enemies, with the enemies of my enemies. It doesn't work that way in science. In science, I'm for myself. Okay, it's like the Three Stooges, say all for one, one for all, imitating at what is it, the Three Musketeers. And Curly says, I'm for myself. And I'm for myself, okay? I'm like Curly, okay? Yeah, I don't take all these BS from all these people, from electric universers and flat earthers, just because, I'm fighting the establishment. Okay, I'm fighting the establishment, but I do it on my own. I don't need these people. Certainly, I don't want to be associated with them. And here's a reason why. Here's the electric universe, okay? It's irrational, completely. Gravity, they say, is electricity. Absolute nonsense. In that sense, the establishment has it correctly. Gravity is gravity. It's not electricity. And electricity has nothing to do with gravity and vice versa. They can't define electricity. I did a little bit of that last time. Here it is real quick. Okay, you go to the Thunderbolts and they say, what is electricity? And it says it's a catch-all term that describes several different phenomena, but a fellow says consensus opinion is lacking precision. Reducing electric terminology into smaller units is impossible because, why? It lies at the bottom of the lexical well. In other words, he says it's just semantics. Okay, and then he says electricity, which we define as the flow of electric charge, particles of charge. But then he has the flow, it's traveling, travels through the circuit. And he says electromagnetic energy flows and electricity moves through the DC circuit. So if electricity is the flow of whatever, now we have the flow of flow that's moving. And here you have what it is really. It's a river. That's what electricity is, according to these people. And if it's the river has two components, okay? And what are they? Well, you have the flow and you have the water. So you can say the water flows, okay? And that's what a river is. But you cannot say the river flows, not in physics. You can do that in ordinary speech, but not in physics. In physics, you have to name the object. In this case, it's the water. And you can say river is water plus flow. Okay, so now we understand that. That's what electricity is according to the electric universe. But see, they say electricity it's either the flow or the water. Which one is electricity? And no, electricity is both, because electricity is like a river according to the establishment and according to the electric universe. Okay, it's a flow of particles. So either you can say the particle flows, and electricity is the particle, or electricity is the flow, or electricity is the particle flows. Okay, in that sense, electricity is a river. But then the object, the thing that is flowing, is the particle. Okay, so let's not lose sight of that. The particle is what is flowing. That's what we're going to concentrate on. We want to know what the physical object that is flowing is. And of course, they can't do that because they can't even start with their atom. They don't have an atom in the electric universe. They still use Niels Bohr and Rutherford's atom, planetary atom, the little proton and the little electron flowing around. And the only question they got to answer before they talk about electricity is, why doesn't the little electron fall to the nucleus, to the proton? Why doesn't it spontaneously fly away? In fact, that was what triggered quantum mechanics, the fact that they could not explain why the electron doesn't spiral into the nucleus. That's what started quantum mechanics. And to this day, we still have no answer to that. The only answer that Mr. Bohr gave, he says, look, the little bead falls between energy levels, back and forth, these regions, right? And it doesn't fall all the way to the nucleus, it just falls to the lower energy level, then it rises to the energy to the upper energy level, and it's within these orbitals. What is an orbital? A concept. It's just a region. We want to know if it's a wall. In fact, it's got to be a wall, one, for it to prevent it from flying out, and the other one from flying in, right? It's two nested walls, spherical walls that encapsulate the proton. We can understand that. But then the question would be, why does the little bead go back and forth, jumping between these two walls? Then you can more or less conceptualize what the atom looks like. That's not what these people are saying. They're saying we have two regions, and the electron just goes back and forth between these two regions. We don't know why it doesn't fall to the nucleus. We don't know why it doesn't fly out of the solar system, or out of whatever, to the other side of the universe. We have no idea from quantum mechanics. Okay, so they invoke electric universe invokes the planetary model, which is absolute nonsense. And until they can get an atom, they can't even talk about electricity, let alone the fact that they can't define it and tell us that it's the flow of flows, okay, and all that stuff. They build their continuous filaments with this discrete atom. They talk about the universe also somewhat being interconnected with all these filaments. Well, again, it's one-way electron flow, and that's how they plan to connect everything, bind everything, pull, I guess, I don't know. And the question there is also if electricity flows from, the negative pole to the positive flow. You have all these electrons, negative electrons flowing to the positive pole. Which star is the positive? Which one's the negative? Do they switch back and forth, alternating current? I mean, a lot of questions that these people don't answer. They treat plasma as a physical object. Plasma is not a physical object under any definition, whether it's the fourth state of matter. There's no physical object, standalone object called fourth state of matter. So that already eliminates. So never use that definition to say that plasma is a fourth state of matter, because you lost already. You don't even realize it. There's no physical object called fourth state of matter, so you cannot say plasma is the fourth state of matter, and then it's also an object, a thing. Okay? So that's the first thing they don't understand, and they say, Bill, you're doing semantics. No, it's called physics, laying the foundations of physics. You have to start with language so that we can communicate. Okay? You can't say, well, I don't care about semantics. I came here to do physics. That's the way these people think, or don't. And then the other issue is that plasma is a dynamic concept. It's not even a physical object. It's a dynamic concept. And again, we have the flowing river. Is the river the water, the flow, or the flow of water? Is it both? And plasma is an atom that's been ionized. Ionized is a verb, not an adjective. You could use it as an adjective. In fact, we use it as an adjective adverb, really, because it's qualifying motion. Ionized means you're going to remove, according to the establishment, according to the electric universe, you're going to remove an electron from an atom. So you're pulling something out. That's not a physical object. You can't say, I pulled a banana out of the pile, and that pulling a banana is a physical object. And that's what plasma is. Plasma is pull an electron from an atom. That's not a physical object. You can say the electron is a physical object, and you can say the atom is a physical object. We can accept that. We cannot say that pulling an electron is a standalone physical object. Okay? Plasma is a dynamic concept. So you can't say plasma does this and plasma does that, because it's already doing it before you even mention the word. So it's neither the fourth state of matter is not a physical object, and pulling an electron is not a physical object. Okay? In both cases, we have verbs. Okay, they also use the ether, the vortex, nonsense. A lot of them, not everybody. Okay, they introduce mathematical physics jargon just casually. Here they criticize the establishment, then they go out there and borrow all their words. Charge, field, wave. They use all these words. None of them are physical objects. You can't use any of those words in science, not in physics. You can use them in mathematics. In the religion of mathematics, you can say, oh, it's a field. Oh, it's a wave. Oh, it's a charge. You can't use those words in science. Okay, those are concepts. You can't say that charge is a standalone physical object. No, charge is 1.6 times 10 to the minus 19 coulombs. That's what charge is. It's a number. And a wave is what? Is a standing thing? No, you can say water waves, flag waves. What's the object? Flag. What's the object? Water. So when you see the electromagnetic wave, what is it that it's waving? And some people say nothing is waving, that it doesn't need a medium for it to be waving. Then how can you conceptualize the waving of nothing? What is waving? Space, like Haramein said? Space is what's waving. Nothing is waving. Please draw it. Okay? And so you can't use that language that these people have borrowed from mathematical physics. And they propose experiments. We don't do experiments in science. Yeah, just like you heard. Let me repeat it just in case you say, well, it was a slip of the tongue. No, we don't do experiments in science. Is that clear? We explain experiments. We explain observations. We don't gawk and say, oh, I did an experiment. I'm a scientist. Oh, I observed. I'm a scientist. No, the fact that you drooled and gawked, doesn't make you a scientist. It's when you come to the conference and you explain the results, what you learned, then you're a scientist. But to say that you did an experiment, here, I do experiments all the time. I let the spoon, let go of it, and it falls to the ground. Does that make me a scientist because I just did an experiment? Oh, sorry, I got to do it repeatable, 2 times at least, okay? So it's a repeatable experiment. There, I'm a scientist. No, we don't do experiments. Gophers do experiments. In fact, where I worked in the fabs, a lot of operators did the experiments for us. We collected the data. We had to analyze the data. That's where the scientist intervenes. But to do an experiment, a lot of people can do experiments. Just need hands and eyes for that. Sometimes not even eyes. Anyways, one thing that they have is that the electric universe, they censor critics. In this sense, they give out a little bit of the medicine that they take. They hate the establishment because the establishment censors them, and they do the same thing to everybody else. So once these organizations are built up, they do censorship as well. So that's the story for Mr. Haramein. Haramein is simply a businessman who put a little shop over there in, I think it's Honolulu, he's in Hawaii. And what he tries to do is, he's diversified, he's got lots of line items there. But the one he's trying to push, because that's his that's what he studied, mathematics, right? He's trying to convince the establishment that he's got something new and that he can help with all this string theory and and the understanding of how this universe works, especially gravity, by saying that a proton is just a tiny black hole, and he's going to fall into this black hole, and he's going to try to map it against the inside, the event horizon. He's going to map whatever garbage fell into the black hole, right? And no one addresses the key issue, which is a black hole is nothing, zero-dimensional, as proven by Mr. Chandrasekhar, for which he won the Nobel Prize. Therefore, there's nothing there, and if you have no matter, you have no mass, so a black hole also has no mass, no size, no nothing. Black hole is the definition of nothing, okay, of empty space.